Introduction. So welcome everyone to Dragon Tail Books and welcome to Dave Greschner. Thank you so much for coming tonight to talk about the soul of the outdoors and you're still writing an outdoor column.
Correct, yeah. And that's on the Leader Telegram every Friday, also Rice Lake and Ashland. So,
Well, thank you so much for sharing.
yeah, okay. And maybe I'll just stay sitting if that's okay.
Sure.
If things get out of hand, I'll stand up.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, I'm Dave and this is my wife Kathy and we live in Rice Lake. So yeah, I just want to thank Ann and the Dragon Tail folks here. And I think my book is in probably about a dozen northern Wisconsin bookshops, but this is the only one that I didn't contact to say, would you consider my book? I just found out that someone said, hey, your book is at Dragon Tail. I think Barb and Paul had something to do with that. I appreciate that. Thank you. And I was just going to say, as I'm talking here, we have a nice small group. That's good. So you can ask questions and comments, make comments anytime. I like to be interrupted. It might help me. I write better than I talk. So anyway,
That helps us with our poor memories too. We have to remember what we wanted to ask.
Okay. And so my book has been out for about a year. And I know some of my colleagues over in Eau Claire, like BJ Hollers, I know, and then Patty C. And they say, after a year, here's what you can expect. People are going to say, when's your next book coming out? It's like, what have you done lately? And the other thing that you can expect, and we'll probably see this summer, you're going to see your book at a garage sale. So I prepared myself emotionally for that. I just hope it's not in that tattered free box. I didn't look right. So,
Well, then it'll be well read.
Yeah. Right.
Just a brief background. I grew up on a farm near Prairie Farm, a dairy farm. And so we'd come to, in high school, we'd come to Menominee, like after special high school events, homecoming and prom, and we'd eat at the Bolo Inn. And that was, that was a big deal for us farm kids. And, I didn't know what to order, didn't even know how to order, but we got through it. So I went on to school, college at UW Eau Claire, and I graduated with a degree in journalism. And 2 days after I graduated, I walked into the Chronotype newspaper in Rice Lake as a rookie reporter. And 44.5 years later, I walked out as Sports Outdoors editor. I retired in 2020, but since retirement, as we were saying, I continue to write an outdoors column weekly for the Leader Telegram, Rice Lake and Ashland. And I also have a blog that I try to update a couple times a month. So
you were the news editor?
I was a sports editor.
Sports.
Yeah, after I got there, just a couple of years later, I was named sports editor, and then a couple more years later, I named myself sports outdoors editor. We didn't have an outdoors. We didn't have an outdoors page, and it just kind of got stuck in. And I thought, this is an area of fishing and hunting, of trails, and people like to camp, and I just wanted to start something like that. And with that page, I thought, I thought I should have a good photo every week, and I love photography, so I kind of got more and more into wildlife photography, nature photography. And also, I always thought people should have something they can read, not just, here's the deer hunting season starting, or here's a fishing report. So I started an almanac, and that would just go over each week what was happening, wildflowers, the moon phases, the weather, how much did it rain, how much did it snow, and all kinds of, migration following that. So, and then I also started my outdoor journal, and it was only 300 words, but it seemed to be well read. People liked it. So I think just going back to my childhood, I was fortunate to have, right outdoor, the woods and the pastures, and a creek going through the pastures, the fields. We had Hay River was just one farm away. And I think I was also, I know that I was fortunate that my parents kind of steered me towards reading and writing. My dad, even doing all his farm chores every day, he was always curious, always looking for things like blackberries and butternuts and agates and arrowheads and wildflowers, all kinds of things like that. He liked to study the clouds and he loved eclipses. And of course, we're supposed to have one tonight. I don't know. It looks like it may be clouding over, but
I
he
think
would.
it's supposed to cloud over and then cloud less
Oh,
around
okay.
midnight, and it does, the
Yeah,
full one
that's-
doesn't start till 1:30 or something.
Yeah,
so-
something like that. Yeah. So maybe it'd be worth looking at. So he would make sure that I could look at solar eclipses through his dark welding glasses and stuff like that. One thing that always impressed me, and it still does, that my dad only had an 8th grade education, but we had 4 newspapers coming to our farm. And he would read them front to back. And, we got the Cappers Weekly out of Topeka, Kansas. And the St. Paul Sunday paper, we were getting the Eau Claire Leader Daily. And then, of course, a local paper out of Barron. So, and at the same, I was reading the newspapers too, mostly sports, of course. But I was into book reading too in grade school, book reading contests. And I always think, and I still do that reading is the key to writing. Not only do you learn from reading, but to write well, I think you just got to read as much as you can, and all different types of books. For a long time, I wouldn't read novels, and now I do read novels because I find a novelist has a way of describing things, and you learn from that. My mom kept a diary, and so when I was a little kid, I had to keep a diary too, and I kind of sporadically did that through high school and college and into my young adulthood. Of course, I changed it to a journal, but that sounded much more sophisticated. So anyway, and so now I find it interesting to go back and to put words to some of those images that I had growing up. Because when you're young, there's so many things you look at. You're especially when you're a kid, you're just full of this curiosity and wonderment, and you see things other adults don't even see. But now I go back and I think about the monarch butterflies. I remember one September they just covered our cottonwood tree, and I didn't know that. I mean, I guess I knew something about migration, but I didn't know that this was the last batch of monarch butterflies of the year, and they're the only ones that will migrate all the way to Mexico. And they're actually in September they're pretty much juveniles, even though they're almost as big as an adult. But then once they get to their Mexico forests, that they mature and then they start back, but they'll never make it back. They lay eggs along the way in the southern states, and that's the next generation that comes north, and some of them might not even make it either. So then another generation finally reaches us, and then they'll go through another egg hatching or 2, and then we're back to September again, and here's these butterflies that have never made this trip 2,000 miles, and there they go. It's really amazing. So the squirrels, my dog and I chase squirrels through the forest and through the woods, and we still like to watch the squirrels. We don't try and chase them away that much from our bird feeders. I think they're wonderful little acrobats, and
They certainly are acrobats.
there's a gymnastics show every day out there.
Mhm.
But I remember as a kid, looking at the squirrel nests, the leaf nests in the trees. But I didn't know at that time that they use them, but when it gets really cold, they would sooner go into a hollow tree, and 4 or 5 of them curl up together. And on cold nights, I still think about those all those squirrels in there intertwined, like a bunch of night crawlers in a coffee can. And frogs, of course. We had, like I said, we had a creek, and I love to catch frogs. But I didn't know how they spent the winter or how they survived the winter. I just knew once that first warm April night, you heard them, and I went down there, tried catching them, looking for the eggs, bringing the eggs back, and then be pollywogs, take the pollywogs back to the creek. And I didn't know that frogs, they got some type of a glycerin in them, antifreeze. They freeze solid, but somehow their organs stay alive, and they literally thaw out again. So But I just thought it was magic that on a spring night, you heard
There they were.
yeah, you heard the frogs. So yeah, I like to examine, what made us happy or makes us happy at certain stages in our life. And certainly as a child, when we're more carefree, we're full of wonder, we're curious. And even though we can't go back to those days, I think we can still find some of that being curious and find some of that, contentment and escape in nature. I was going to do a little something different tonight. I was going to read a poem that's not in the book, something I wrote a couple of years ago. And I'm not a poet, but I think there's only one true poem in this book. But it's been described by a couple of writers that reviewed my work. They call it prose with lyrical poetry. And I do find that for some reason, it comes easy for me when I'm writing to rhyme some words, to rhyme some phrases and things like that. At the Wisconsin Newspaper Association convention just last weekend, one of my editors was nice enough to enter my outdoors columns in the weekly division, and the judges there also said the columns had a poetic style, and that they were transporting, which was something new to me. I think what they meant was they take you somewhere else to a better place for at least a little while.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to read this, and maybe this poem will transport you somewhere. And it's called To the Creek. May I go to the creek as a child again. I'll put my shoes and socks on this rock. I hope I can. But where to put these worries and fears? Will the gurgling waters carry away the troubles and the tears? Perhaps so, with help from the frogs and my memories of carefree evenings by the water, buds on the trees. A falling a creek that flowed only in the spring, cool water on my toes, frog eggs in a jar, birds with red wings. A killdeer ran scolding through the pasture. Dad's tractor groaned through plowing the field. Was I ever happier? I jumped to the large flat rock in the small pond. Frogs leaped from cover. I stared at water spiders. I'd stay too long. Mom beckoned me for supper. I catch one more frog, let it go, knowing I peered in the night through the fog. May I go to the creek as a child again? I'll rest my worries and fears on this rock, close my eyes and listen. I think I can. Thank you. So what is the book about? This is a short answer about nature and wildlife, and I think our interactions and intersections with the natural world. I'd like to trace and examine the flow and the balance and the recurrence of nature, and animals, plants, and everything, and how does that affect the flow and balance in our own life, and how nature plays on our moods, emotions, and our well-being. I always like to look at, I think of being outdoors, studying nature, and that as a daily medicine that I need to take, and even if I can't get out there, I'd like to read about it. I find that it grounds me, calms me, and I think it gives us some hope and perspective in hectic times. I'm also always inspired by the resolve of the inhabitants of the world, of the plants, how they survive, and sometimes why they don't survive. And then I'm always trying to learn, and just from my experiences, but also I do a lot of research, and I try and pass some of that along in my writing. I don't want to get boring like a textbook, but I like to get some of those little facts and figures in there. The book also has stories on just rural life, maybe simple home life. It has some humor. I wrote about puppy's first spring. Camping, which is always just a comedy of errors and mistakes. But and I
Argument.
and of course the seasons. I like to follow the seasons. I just love that we have 4 distinct seasons. I don't know if I can live somewhere and be happy where everything's the same all the time. So that being said, I'm going to read a little bit from a journal in March, so I guess it's timely.
So are some of these columns that you had written
Yeah,
in the
In the
book?
book,
yeah, and I can just tell that now. So what I did was, I was writing a general column for the type that could be about anything. And sometimes it was about outdoors in nature. And I also was doing a short journal. And so I picked out, some of the best of those. We went month by month because the book goes 2 months at a time. And, I maybe have 12, 15 candidates to pare down to 3 for each month. And I did a lot of rewriting to make, for length and just because I think I'm a little better writer now than I was even 10 or 15 years ago. So some of the stuff from 25 years ago, 30 years, it makes me cringe now. But I can work with it. And then, like I said, I started when I retired, I kept writing a column. And I started an outdoor blog. So some of it's from that. And some was new material, especially the introduction to each of the 6 parts. So, and this is from March, and it's called Order of Assurance. And I won't read the whole thing, but just so you get an idea. From atop a hill, my vantage point of the lake gives me cause to pause, as does the silence. I don't know which drew me here the most, but I'm thinking it is something more than the landscape and lack of noise. As I look down on the lake, still covered in ice and snow, I understand that nature has order, and that feeds my reflective mood. I know the ice will melt, then the migrant ducks will arrive, and so too will the songbirds all along the moving shore. There will be the sequence, structure, and succession of spring, the same as last year, but somehow all new again, all in nature's amazing timing and excess. Hounded and chased by bad news, I took to the outdoors. There is always nature, the outdoors, offering a diversion from worries and the hectic pace we thrust upon ourselves. Nature is the tonic, a healthy haven for body and soul, where we clear our heads and breathe fresh air. I touched the maple tree trunk with its sweet sap oozing out, urged on by March's afternoon sun, which also urged me to come here and here have some fill. We all can't walk the woods and shorelines, but we all can let nature take over our thoughts for a time, move the troubled horizon for a moment or more, perhaps simply by watching a bird feeder, a sunrise, or the melting ice in the order of spring's reveal. Slowly, yet surely, nature is consistent in its tranquility, peace, and pace. Worries be calmed. I guess I've come to write in kind of an introspective manner, but I didn't always put myself into my writing, and I guess I don't know why. I think I was young and maybe unsure of myself. The other thing was, especially with the outdoor journal, I didn't even put my name on it for a long time until my editor made me. But I just thought, well, I'm just writing about what everybody sees and experiences. I don't want to act like I own this and then I know everything. But I continued to, I kept reading good columnists and saw how they worked. And at a Wisconsin Newspaper Association workshop, it was on column writing. And I remember the speaker saying, it kind of struck me. He said, if you're writing a personal column, be personal. They said, your readers want to know you. They want to know how you feel, what makes you happy, what makes you sad, your emotions, because they have the same feelings, but they want you to say it. They want to relate to it. And of course, I want to relate to readers. So I started doing that more, exploring my own thoughts, feelings, and experiences through nature and the outdoors. And there's I guess we have time. I'll read this. This is probably, so I was kind of keeping my own personal journals. And then when I would turn them into a newspaper column or whatever, I would take some of those parts out. I feel like this, or me and I, and all this stuff. So, but then I think this is probably an example. Again, I won't read the whole thing, but I think one of these first example of when I said, okay, I'm just going to start writing more and putting this in the paper and see how it goes. It's called Flailing. It's from a journal in June. I turn on the reading ramp next to them. Within minutes, a beetle is alternately clinging to and flailing against the window screen. It's an evening in June, near the solstice, the lingering bluish light having finally given into darkness, bringing with it a whisper of cool air. The lamp was between me and the window, only a foot from each, and I could throw my arm back and slap the screen with my hand, but I don't, for I am fascinated by this hard-bodied, dark brown beetle. In turn, it's fascinated with my light. The beetle buzzes, sound vibrating from its wings. It scrapes the wire screen as it crawls closer to the light it can't touch. Isn't seeing the light enough? So what does it want indoors next to my light? Would it trade food for the warmth of the bulb? Is that why it buzzes at the screen? It's trapped outdoors. I'm trapped indoors in the light of a late night, thinking of too much to do. My thoughts bang against the screen, wishing for the peaceful darkness of the outdoors. The June bug and I, on opposite sides of the screen, both reaching for something, both flailing in the summer night. I turn off the light and try to fall asleep. The June bug falls to the ground. Yeah, quickly, the journey of the book, I kind of said already about, I took a collection of these columns, blogs, journals, whatever, and I wrote some new material and tried to put them into a logical order. It goes 2 months at a time, January, February, March, April, so on. And in each part, there is 3 journals for each month and 3 longer chapters. The graphics of the book, I was pretty much responsible for. So I took some of they're all my photos. I took them and I turned them into black and white and kind of posterized them a little bit. And that's kind of the look that I wanted. So it came out okay. So I sent the manuscript, the first publisher I sent the manuscript to was over in Minnesota, and they liked it, but they said, we don't do many narratives. They were more of a how-to, where to go canoeing, where to go fishing, where to go on the trail and all that. But they encouraged me to keep trying. So the second one suggested to me to try Cornerstone Press out of W. Stevens Point. And I did that, and I heard back from them that they want to work with the manuscript. So it was in May of 2022. So the rest of that year, they told me to do whatever revisions you have to do, and we'll start working on it next year, 2023. So I don't know that I didn't know that much about publishers. They did move kind of slowly, but it was okay. And Cornerstone Press has an interesting makeup. The publisher is the head of the English department, a real good guy now, but he relies on his senior students in English and publishing to put the books out. And at first I thought, geez, I am 60 some years old.
What do they know? Really?
Yeah, what do they know? I didn't, depending on some 21-year-olds, but it went real well. I found that they were really engaged and they were very knowledgeable. And maybe so that if I had gotten a real publisher, I mean, an established place.
Were they real conscientious?
What were they?
Yeah, did they try really hard to do everything right? Did they
Yes,
seem like
they
they were
did,
real motivated that way?
They went more with a literary style, which I began to accept because I was in newspapers and, we take out every possible comma we can, and we write as short and tight as we can. And so this was a little bit different. And so they were making suggestions. And at first I said, no, I don't want a comma there. And I thought, well, okay. And I started reading more books, just looking for that. But yeah, they are going by a more literary style. I guess that's what I speak. And so over the next year, then we went through about 4 editings. And I was working basically with one girl. She was a senior student. She was very good. And things came out the way I wanted. And if I had any suggestions at all, they would immediately fold and say, yeah, that's okay. But we gave and take, and it worked out well.
And how long was that process?
They didn't start working on it until the spring of 2023. So I was starting to get worried.
Yeah.
But then they worked on it all summer and into the fall, and then the book came out just about Christmas time in 2023.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Yeah, it went well once it got going.
Mhm.
But they surprisingly do a lot of books over there, and they have their own printing press on campus, so. If I call them tomorrow and say, hey, I need 10 more books, they could have
Do
it
it.
ready right away, so. I'm gonna grab a book. My last summer in Eau Claire, I didn't have a whole lot to do. I was only taking one course and working at Fanny Hill. So, but my buddies and I went to a garage sale. I think it was just by a lark, and I picked up this book, and I'm sure you all do this too. I just picked it up just because of the cover. I knew nothing about Annie Dillard, and this book, pretty much changed the way I looked at nature, the way I wrote about it, and I still read, every week from this book. You can see it's been well
Yeah.
used, and so Annie Dillard had a big influence on me. The way she wrote, others would have been Sigurd Olson, Aldo Leopold, of course, Mary Oliver, who I discovered later, I guess, but I just love her poems. John Hildebrand, who was more of a local guy. Here's some wonderful books, and somebody I came across in the last year, Wayne Fields. So I think at this point I was going to read. Yeah, I was going to. Well, if we have, what time is it? You were going to blow a whistle.
That's the time.
I had a couple minutes. Okay, I just always find it interesting to talk about the covers, and if there was one hiccup with Cornerstone Press, see, I put together my own newspaper pages all the time. We won state awards for design and that, and I took a lot of pride in that. How to crop the photos, where to place them, the headlines, the type, how wide should the columns be, and so. I kept wondering what's going to happen with the cover of this book, but I thought, well, they're the publishers. I'm going to back off. So the first one that Dr. Ross sent me, he said, "What do you think of this cover?" Yeah, I said, "Oh my goodness,
It's a little scary.
Yeah, I said, "It
It's
scared the
why.
heck out of me. I'm not going into that woods, so I'm not going into that book, So I got back to it. I said, "Ross, I didn't really think much of that. It looked a little too Alfred Hitchcock to me." And he said, "Oh, no, I want you to be happy. So what do you think?" So I sent him this. Now remember, I was impressed by this. And so we were camping up at my Minot one time, and I just love the trees and everything. Okay, I love the trees, but it's pretty much one dimensional. And there's a problem, but he liked this and he put it together. I mean, it was ready to go. But there, you can see there's one problem with it. It looks like I'm ready to start a forest fire.
Right, right, yeah.
And I did everything I could to tame this down, and it just doesn't come off like we're sitting around a campfire.
But they've gone from essays to reflections. I think that was
Yeah.
Right.
that was a nice improvement.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that was another thing. And so, from here up, I loved it. Okay.
Yeah,
But we, I don't know, it was like in August or something, and I still was thinking about it. Gee, I think we could have a better cover, but this is nice, this is okay. And all of a sudden I got something from Ross one day, and he said, I've been thinking about the cover and I'm not happy with where we left it. So he sent me this. This is what he sent me, okay?
Oh.
So at first, neither Kathy or I liked it, but then I got to thinking, okay, I get what he's going at. There's different aspects in
Of
this
a
book.
variety of.
Yeah, and it shows maybe more about what the book is. But I can, as a newspaper, a guy who put together pages, I could see all the problems here. This deer was going off the page. This was going off the page. You never have a football player running off the page, running into the copy. But this was supposed to be a bunch of blackbirds in a tree in the fall, but I don't know where.
Not recognizable.
Yeah, it is.
Especially when
It doesn't
this
work
big.
at all. And these were my photos. Ross had these. They were like extras, and I didn't like a tree up here. I thought a tree should be down here. So I worked with it for a while, and I changed a couple photos. I sent it back to him. So now we got the owl looking down in here. We put the tree down here and made sure the shadow showed up. And you could use this for copy, which they did. We got a heron rookery. We have another deer here that's looking at us, and then of course we have the going through the middle of the old fence line.
It's getting better.
So that's what we
ended
so
up
then
with.
so then the end result was that, oh, yeah, the other thing was, I told Ross, I said, this reflection looks like it dropped off somebody's desk, you know, and ended up there, you know, so this is what we ended up with, and the more we looked at it, the more we liked it, and I have a couple of good friends who are 25 years younger than I am, they're in graphics, and they said, yeah, this is what you want. They said,
Yeah.
so, okay, so I like to show that as I just think it's interesting, you know, you don't think about how does a cover come together and how important it is, because you know, you look at a cover, and that's probably the cover and the title.
Yeah, right.
Draw you to the book, so, okay.
Looks like a barred owl.
Yeah, that is a bard, yeah. And that is my photo. I was snowshoeing one day many years ago, and it was late afternoon, and it flew in front of me. And oh, geez, you know, I didn't see it. And it didn't go that far away, so I had my snowshoes on. I thought, I'm gonna follow it. I don't want to bother it, but maybe I can get a photo. I had my camera with me. I got close, it flew again. And then one more time. And then all of a sudden it just quit flying, and I walked right underneath it, and it just kept looking down at me like, you know, what do you want?
Why are you
know?
following me?
That's all I want is your photo. That's all I want.
I think they're somewhat social.
Are they?
I think so.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah,
barred. I've run
Yeah.
into the same thing. They look at
okay,
you.
yeah. I
You're
came
down
up-
there, so I'm safe.
I came up on one a year ago, it was, and I didn't get real good photos of it, but it was sitting with its back to me. And I thought, oh, that's an owl. It's looking that way. And then all of a sudden this whole head came around and was looking at me.
You know, our son lives in St. Paul and why were we talking about birds anyway? I don't know at that time, but anyway, I had bird stories I was telling him that I thought were impressive, and then he sends a picture, and he had just gotten out of his car and looks across the street, and there's a barred owl on the neighbor, a little sculpture they have in the front, just staring at him.
Oh,
And just
yeah.
you just like it's
Yeah.
not in a remote area at all. It's in, you know, it's
Urban.
yeah, it's just
Sometimes we don't
east of
even-
Como Park, kind of, in
Yeah,
over by Dale. And
Okay,
yeah, just
Yeah.
little houses, little neighborhood, and that woman's yard was a little wild, you know, it wasn't a mowed Kemp yard, she had some native plants and things, but
Yeah.
still. Safe.
you always gotta keep your
He
eyes.
was only like as far away as, not to the. I don't
Yeah,
know,
that's
the
a good
length of
eye if
this
you
room or
got him.
something.
If you saw him on his back only,
Yeah,
they're tough to pick out.
yeah, they are, yeah,
Yeah.
but, I'm just gonna put this photo on here. I'm gonna read one more thing, and then we'll kind of wrap it up here. You were supposed to blow a whistle.
It's not late.
And so, again, I won't read all of this, but yeah, this is, yeah, I'll keep this side about the same. I was having trouble getting it a straight black and white. I kept getting a tinge of green out of my printer, but so what I'm gonna read here from, it's an introduction to, I think, March and April. Yeah, waiting for spring, March and April. And this is how the photo came out in the book.
Mhm.
So, I have a black and white photo of a black dog asleep on a white sheet. The sheet has fallen from a clothesline in March, or perhaps April, decades ago. Though the snow has melted from the lawn, trees in the background are leafless on this cloudy day, warm and windy enough that my mother hung up washed bed sheets and pillowcases to dry. The whites are fanning out to one side, telling me there is a considerable breeze from the south. The wind was strong enough to loosen one sheet from its wooden clothespins. Ranger, the dog, has stumbled across this good fortune on the grass just in time for nap time, a break from his spring explorations. Ranger took advantage of what the day handed him. That is my approach in March and April, seemingly a 61-day dicey and icy bridge between winter and full-blown spring. The 2 months may offer us, without waiting for our approval or disapproval, more of winter, a little of spring, a feeling of summer, and then more of winter. They tease and please. They bury us in snow or boost us in spring fever. I explore in March and April. I look for the white sheet on which to rest the hopes of spring. In childhood, I skipped along the pasture creek in search of pollywogs and frogs. I dug little ditches to drain the driveway of puddles so I could ride my bicycle. Those were simple childhood rites of spring. Some years later, I delved deeper into the season of awakening, inspired by Annie Dillard in her book Pilgrim at Tinker Creek. Of spring, Dillard wrote, I plan to control myself this year, to watch the progress of the season in a calm and orderly fashion. In spring, I am prone to wretched excess. And the final paragraph, these months require patience, a stoic approach, and a ready sweatshirt. And on those days when spring bursts through the budding branches, we are allowed wretched excess. We can count the robins on the lawn, see the emerging chipmunks, listen for frogs, watch winter running away down the hill. If we are fortunate, we will find a fallen white sheep on which to rest our winter weariness. And I did see a chipmunk today for the first time this week. So he looked very happy. He's running all over. So I guess to wrap up here, I just hope that my book, and I've had some readers tell me, it encourages readers to get out and explore the natural world, to look at things and to expect to see things. And sometimes the best way is just to sit down and let it come to you. So I know a lot of bird watchers do it that way. So, and I think it's, you know, to remain curious and to learn. I think the more that we learn about our natural world, the more we are apt to help wildlife, plants, animals, and to be stewards of the land, which I think is very important, and to protect our environment wherever and however we can do that. So that's what I have here.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
That was good.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I have, you're free to welcome to take bookmarks. I have my card here. I do have books for sale. If anybody needs one, they would be
Do you want one?
a flat 17 tonight. So
Sure. Does anyone have any questions?
So, but feel free to take bookmarks no matter what.
Maybe.
So any other questions or comments or?
I mean, I understand that you learned lots and lots from just interacting and observing nature, but did you also study it formally or just on your own?
No,
So when you were studying journalism, you didn't also
no,
take botany or biology
No,
classes? I don't think they had environmental classes then, maybe.
my extra studying was done on Water Street. No,
Has to have others.
I minored in history. I probably should have minored in something else like English or something like that, or what you're talking about.
But no,
I enjoyed
because you're a
history.
wealth of information without doing that, but I'm impressed with that.
Well, I just did, like I said, a lot of reading. And I think I didn't get into, I did some rough grouse hunting, and for a few years I did a lot of it. And then I was reading all those books, and then you just keep, learning about different things. So. And I'm still doing that. So.
I also wondered if you, when you were naming off people, since I'm a fan, but have you read Wendell Berry?
I don't think so. Wendell?
Yeah, I have to look up Wendell Berry. He's
I-
an old man now.
Okay.
In his 90s now, but.
Okay. I come to a lot of books late. I discover a book and I look at 20 years old, I'll tell, I have a cousin who reads, I'll say, oh, that book is so old. Everybody knows
Everybody's
about
read
that. So, yeah, so I keep discovering some of these stuff. Some of these people that I enjoy it. The book I mentioned, Wayne Fields, excellent writer, he wrote What the River Knows. And he spent the summer at their cabin in the Upper Peninsula. He was a professor in Missouri. But he kind of tied it all together. He wanted to find the origins of this trout stream that went through Porcupine Mountains and everything. But he tied it all together with, like, he was like 45 years old. His kids were growing up. They didn't want to go to the cabin that much anymore. They were detached. And so it was kind of like almost a midlife crisis. And at the same time, he was having this crisis trying to figure out how to go the next step along his trout stream or trout.
Right.
So, yeah, they tied it all together beautifully.
What's that name?
Wayne Fields, and the book was What the River Knows. And that's a book that came out in the early 2000s.
Which is 20 years ago.
Huh?
20 years ago already.
Yeah. And I just
Amazing.
read John Hildebrand's, the Yukon River one. And that's
Oh.
20 some years ago.
Yeah.
That was excellent. I like books where there's, and since I have a newspaper background, where there's some reporting and writing.
Yeah,
John Color is excellent at that, you know, some of his books,
Right.
Get Into the Wild.
right.
Yeah, the Mount Everest one, so, yeah. But where there's also good reporting,
Yeah.
besides good writing.
Yeah, Sigurd Olson is kind of like that, where he describes landscapes, land he's traveling through, and
Yeah.
then writes about what he thinks about.
Yeah, yeah, and he had such an easy style, smooth.
I'm sending it to you, because I don't know where to put that.
Okay.
That Wayne Fields. See, you're gonna get text that says Wayne Fields, what the river was.
So do you live out in the country now?
No, we don't.
You live in
I know
town?
People think we do from my writing.
Yeah.
We live on the very north end of Rice Lake, the right end of
Okay.
the city. So like, the Wild Rivers Trail goes a half a block away from us, or 1 block away. And the Wild Rivers Trail goes northward, goes all the way to Superior, but it goes northward, and then 3 miles later, it to Scobia Trail. That
Mhm.
goes all the way to Park Falls, so I've had those, you know, those two things, you know, for a long, long time to walk on, to run on, ski on, snowshoe. And we also have some land yet that hasn't been developed on the edge of Rice Lake, not far from us, where we go into the woods where there's a lot of trails.
Yeah,
That's where you cut wood.
Excuse me?
You've mentioned cutting wood.
Yeah,
and-
He does that very far
Oh,
and
okay.
on the land.
yeah,
And then he was talking about the land where we live.
yeah.
It's being, there's some that, it used to be a big farm.
Yeah, they live
And
a
now it's
Sherwood family, and
industrial.
No,
yeah,
So they're
yeah,
more and more.
exchange.
things
spreading. The ever spreading cities.
yeah, but most in Rice Lake, thankfully, most of it, you know, is south end.
Yeah,
Did you also grow up in Prairie Farm?
No, I grew up in Rice Lake. And we met in, well, his second year was, he went to the Fairfield campus. And when I went in my first year in high school, he graduated the year ahead of me. That's where we met.
So Prairie Farm was the east fork, they hate, correct?
Yeah, it is.
We're
On the
half a
west.
mile or less from the west fork.
yeah,
And my thoughts, I mean, when you're that one prose you were reading, I felt exactly the same way. Not only as a child though, I still do. Whoa, spring is changing really fast. I need to see what's going on here. So I try and concentrate a little more on
Yeah,
what's happening and I also take our dog for a walk and we go down by the river. You can't get to the river anymore because of the backwater right now. It's pretty full up, but there's one backwater that has tadpoles, stuff
Okay.
like that.
so what river is that? That
That's the West Fork.
Oh, Hay River,
Yeah,
yeah,
and then they come together down south of Weir.
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
pretty hopping river there. Well, the East Fork goes by Stephen Man.
Right,
So
Right.
is that
And it's wild.
in print somewhere?
It's a
I would like to.
It's nice.
It's
Yeah.
wild.
What I'd like to do is take a picture.
Foil.
No, take a
Yeah.
picture. You read it aloud,
Yeah.
and you
Well,
turn the
the
page
page
over. Wish I had that.
Well, you give me your email, you can have this one, but it's not very nice.
I don't care, can retype it, I wanted to send it to my son because it just sounded like him so much when he lived by a pond. He had a pond right outside our house and he just spent hours. in
Yeah,
it.
there's only 2 little corrections on here. Those 2 words, they
Okay.
flip flopped, and then I changed the word back there.
That's
So.
great.
But you can have that, yeah.
Okay, when you get really, really famous,
Yeah.
Bring it out and say,
I'll
oh,
say,
look what
I
I'm
have an
talking
original
about."
copy
Yeah,
where
I
we
didn't
changed
sign
that
it.
word.
Sign it.
Maybe you had him
Yeah.
sign it,
Yeah.
just in case.
Oh.
Who's got a pen?
I don't know.
I got it. I really-
So I often quiz Barb. Well, now this book you're talking about, is that fiction or nonfiction? So
Yeah,
what would you consider Soul of the Outdoors?
oh, well, it's all
Nonfiction.
nonfiction, yeah. I know, that's one of the first questions that I've been asked by the college student. Is this fiction, she said, or are these stories real? And
How much are you making up?
Yeah, I was kind of taken aback for a moment. I said, well, yeah,
The real thing.
this is my life. you
Real
know.
place, yeah.
That's my body.
So, but I guess I didn't think about that. That's something that I made up a bunch of stuff.
Mm.
I have to tell him about this picture. This in the very front of the book. He dedicated the book to his parents and me.
Oh.
But this picture is an old black and white picture that his mother took when he was a little kid next to the
Oh.
snowman. And
No, man.
with a box camera.
Oh,
And we still have the old photo, and so he did it, posterized it. And you can see in the back, there was an old schoolhouse on their property.
Oh,
Reed School, yep, and that's still back there. And his mom always bundled him up so much that.
yeah.
he couldn't
they
even
couldn't
fit
move.
him
I
up, you
was
know,
kidding.
Right.
I looked like the Michelin man and
Yeah.
he said I couldn't breathe. I remember, I think I wrote somewhere, I said, that, the wind looked at me and gave, I said, I'm gonna go on to some other little kid.
But it's just, I thought, had she lived long enough, which unfortunately she passed away a few years before he got
Yeah.
the book published, she would have been.
Before we got
just-
famous.
Tickled, yeah.
She was.
She would have really,
flabbergasted.
How does it say someplace in the book what that picture is?
no, not really.
Oh, for shame, for shame.
Yeah. I just thought
Yeah, you
it
should
had
give
such
credit
an
to your mother.
interesting.
You
Yeah,
kind of guess who that's a picture of, but you don't really know.
right.
I should have done that in the back somewhere where you do that.
But it could be any little kid.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it speaks to the
Well, in a
whole
future
area.
edition,
Yeah.
you know, you can
Yeah, there
have
were
some
some things
additional
that
comments.
I look back, I wish I would have made it a little bit longer. Although my friend Dan Lick's Claire said, no, it's good length, it's a good length, he said, but the other thing, I didn't have a forward or an introduction. I didn't really think about it, but then again, I thought, well, I don't.
Yeah.
You gotta ask somebody to write it.
Yeah.
Keep it simple.
Yeah.
right.
Keep it simple.
Well, we'd like to.
Yeah,
Well, thank you so much.
yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
That was very good.
Everybody can come.
Thanks a lot.